So we honestly have not talked since I've been back a ton about L'Jarius Sneed. We got into it a little bit yesterday, but not really. It's a huge move. It solidifies your secondary. Still need safety help. Don't feel good about your depth corners, but you're a better team with him than you were without him. The knee stuff. He's got knee issues that he's dealt with over the course of some time. Kansas City seemed to have had a pretty significant plan in place to make sure to get him through his week-to-week responsibilities and make him available for game day, of which he did. The thing that you also have to account for is he was in a contract year, L'Jarius Sneed, so availability is always going to be at a premium, and unless it's like completely debilitating and keeping you off the field, these things are manageable. Athletes, when you say that L'Jarius Sneed has had issues with his knees before, you compared it to Tajay Spears, right? Where he has had issues with his knees, but they don't seem to be bothering him right now.
It's never impacted, as I say never, but in the last year of college and in his rookie year, did it impact his availability or production one iota?
No.
So until it does, it's just something to keep an eye on. That's exactly how I feel about L'Jarius Sneed.
So let me make an even more notable comparison for Titans fans, just because it was part of the justification, part of the coping that Titans fans did with this player on the way out the door. A.J. Brown has issues with his knees. Doesn't mean that A.J. Brown can't be available. He has been thoroughly available, I think, in almost every game in the last 2 seasons. I think he's missed one game in the last 2 seasons for Philadelphia, and that was something that Titans fans justify or tried to use to justify, and I know not all of you were justifying the trade, but like as you were working through your stages of grief.
Coping, yeah, it was a part of the coping process.
It was a part of the coping process, yes.
Injury prone and drops.
No, he's a diva. He makes TikToks when he has surgeries. That I missed. That was funny.
Remember that?
Oh, what a time. Come home.
We were living on another planet, it feels like.
That feels like an eternity ago. And it was really only 3 seasons, not even 3 seasons.
It was literally 3 years ago. Yeah, it was 3 years ago.
So,
wow.
Still, it seems like 15. But anyway, AJ has to manage his knee situation. There are plenty of players in the NFL that have to manage certain situations. That L'Jarius Sneed passed a physical, got the contract that he got, will sign it here in the next couple of days, if not next week, and be announced at a Titans press conference, means that he's got a knee situation that he has to continue to manage, but it's not going to outright keep him from performing his duties as a corner on Sundays. So, where else can he help the Titans? Who else benefits from this player besides everybody on the defense? Well, Denard Wilson, who has a long history of secondary coaching and secondary expertise. He has been able to maximize a lot of players everywhere that he's been. And when he, I guess first, but also last spoke with us, I think it was, a week before the Combine is when they had the introductory press conferences for the coordinators. When Denard Wilson spoke about versatility within his defense, see if you can pick up on any themes of which would be applicable to Sneed.
Well, it goes back to this: the more you can do, right? When you draft players, you don't want to peg a player in one position. The more you can do to help the team become versatile. Like you can have a corner that, he brings a different aspect, and he can line up at nickel and he's a good blitzer. He can line up in the slot, right? This is a matchup game as well. There's so many great receivers in this game, and the game is spread wide open. You want to have people that's versatile, all right, to play numerous positions, to line up, to be able to adjust and adapt to what you're getting from the offense.
So versatility at a premium there. Versatility is something that Sneed brings. He's going to be your outside corner. He's going to be one of your outside corners. I think in a perfect world, this puts McCreary back on the inside, and Cheeto can be your other outside corner. But it's not just about the versatility of the player. It's about an attitude and a style with which he plays. So we're saving a lot of the Sneed analysis from Greg Cosell for the live show on May the 3rd. You can get your tickets right now at 1045thezone.com. If you're live streaming, Lucas dropped the link in the chat for you guys earlier. Perhaps he'll be kind enough to do it again. And we'll break down, we're going to do deep dive, in-depth film studies of L'Jarius Sneed and how what he did in Kansas City and his skill set might be applicable to the Titan system that will be run under Denard Wilson. But it's not just about how he fits in the scheme. It's about what he brings that's extra. And that's something that Cosell spoke to yesterday on the podcast.
But here's the one thing I'll say about Sneed, and then we'll leave it alone so we can get into more detail, at the install on May 3rd. He brings not only quality play, but he brings a swagger and an attitude. And I think in some ways that can be seen as just as important. So, because he is a press man corner, which doesn't mean he has to play press every snap, but you see him get right in the face of receivers. He's physical, he's aggressive, he's competitive. And, I'll just say this. They've now signed a Woozy and Sneed. So what was a major weakness a year ago is now a strength. And the one thing about this league now, the way it's going, is you can't cover up for bad corner play. And now they do not have bad corner play. So think of it this way. If you feel your corners aren't good enough, that shrinks your playbook. When you feel your corners are good and you can play man, that expands your defensive playbook. So we'll leave it at that, but that's really the way it works.
Feeling pretty good about L'Jarius Sneed, yeah?
When Cosell talks about that, the mentality and the physicality at the line of scrimmage, nothing comes to mind for me more than his matchup with Tyreek Hill in the playoffs on that icy night in Kansas City.
This dude had a hell of a run as far as top wide receivers that he had to defend last year. The Tyreek Hill matchup is a great example.
5 catches, 62 yards on that night. It was one of his lowest performing nights just from a production perspective of the season for Tyreek Hill. The Titans game is up there, but he didn't play hardly in that game with an ankle injury. I remember L'Jarius Sneed talking, him and Tyreek had kind of a back and forth in the offseason, last offseason. And L'Jarius Sneed's making appearances on NFL Network talking about Tyreek talks a lot of trash. He's talking about coming back to Arrowhead. Remember Tyreek had this whole thing about he can't wait to go play the Chiefs, and L'Jarius Sneed said, I've been taking notes. Well, we'll see when he comes to Arrowhead. And he got in his head. He was more physical than Tyreek Hill that night. He was physically and mentally tougher than Tyreek Hill that night. He's like smacking him around after the play is over, right? Giving him extra pushes. And I remember Blaine.
Tyreek Hill's used to smacking people around. He's not used to getting smacked around.
I remember Blaine glowing about L'Jarius Sneed after that game because of that style of play. Before, during the play, and after it. So the days of Titans corners lining up 10, 12, 13 yards off receivers feel like they might be over, especially with L'Jarius Sneed.
Can you imagine? Now, he is coming off as good a season as he's ever had, okay? This is an all-pro caliber season. He wasn't an all-pro. He was snubbed, and I think he was the most notable snub of any of the names that did make the all-pro list last year.
Who were the corners?
That's a great question. I know L'Jarius Sneed was not one of them.
I'll look it up.
Okay, we can go back. In fact, why don't we look it up while we hear from Andy Reid, who Jim Wyatt caught up with at owners meetings.
No, it's Kaharski.
Oh, excuse me. Paul Kaharski caught up with at owners meetings, speaking about the former Chiefs, now Titans corner.
Yeah, one of my all-time favorite guys. Great human being. As great a player as he is, an even better human being. And as tough as you can imagine. So I'm his biggest fan. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you juggle this salary cap, and it's ridiculous what you have to go through, and the players you can keep and you can't keep, and it's. But we all loved him there. That wasn't the problem. So he was our lockdown guy. The best receiver, he had the best receiver.
Now, lockdown guy, reception percentage allowed. So on a scale of 100, what percentage of receptions do you think that L'Jarius Sneed allowed last year?
Oh, man. I hate this game.
I love this game.
Because I have no idea what the league average is.
I don't care.
Or
what percentage, Lucas?
Say it again. Read the parameters again.
Reception percentage. What reception percentage out of 100% did L'Jarius Sneed allow last year?
23.
It's so much worse when you undercut it with an extreme number like that. You think he allowed 23%
I don't know.
of passes to be caught?
I don't know
What a ridiculous
the
thing.
median
What a
number would
ridiculous
be.
thing to say by you. Doesn't know ball, Lucas Panzica.
What do we talk? What, 42?
God, 52.
Okay, half.
People are going to think people are going to think he allows every pass to be completed now because you start at 23.
23.
23%?
23 as I was thinking 23 isn't a good thing. Did I have that reversed? Should I have
Yes.
said 73?
I mean, no, 23 would be a phenomenal thing. 23 means that 75% of his passes, 77% of his
not
passes
completed.
are not completed.
Right.
Yeah, that's not a thing at the NFL level.
I hate you for doing that.
What do you think he allowed last year?
I'm not playing. I'm taking my ball and I'm going home.
70.5%, okay? So that his average is 66.1%. Last year's number is well below the average of receptions that L'Jarius Sneed has allowed in his career. Now, there's some volatility to that number. It's not something that you can necessarily bank on, but from rookie season in 2020 to last year, 63.2, 75%, 70.5, 52.0% of receptions were completed in his direction.
I'd like to ask Cosell if the Chiefs used him any differently in 2023 as opposed to 21 and 22. Just because he got to the backfield a lot more in those years. He had 3.5 sacks in 2022.
It's a good point.
So I'd just be curious to hear his perspective on that.
He allowed a career low in terms of touchdowns. Only 2 is what Pro Football Focus credits him with. The previous year, he allowed 5. The longest pass that he allowed last year was 54 yards. The previous was 45. So like, even if he's not an all-pro caliber player here, like if he's not L'Jarius Sneed of specifically last season, it's still a good deal. Because he's better than any corner that they had. He's one of the best players at his position, and you have to allow a little bit of variance at corner, I think more than any other position that you're talking about here. But I still expect him to be a high-quality player, even if he's not L'Jarius Sneed All-Pro 2023 season.
The first-team All-Pro corners of 2023 were Deron Bland, who was always going to get it because of his crazy pick six numbers.
Which is trash because that's such a lazy way to do the All-Pro voting. Interception leaders. That's
the amount of pick sixes he had. What was it, 5 or 6?
No, it was ridiculous.
Something crazy. Sauce Gardner
worth it.
was the other one.
Yeah.
And the slot corner was Trent McDuffie, Sneed's teammate.
Right. Who is arguably as good a corner, if not better corner, than is L'Jarius Sneed.
Second team, Jalen Johnson in Chicago, who got a big deal this offseason, and Charvarius Ward, the former MTSU star with the 49ers. The slot corner on the second team All-Pro list was Taron Johnson, Buffalo.
Who just got paid.
Yeah.
Got paid big time. So Sneed helps a variety of different things. But most importantly, he's your foundational piece in the secondary now. Because he's only 27 years old. And that's the thing that makes you feel best about a deal like this. You would have so much rather have seen them do this deal than take who was it that signed Tre'Davious White yesterday? I saw he got a deal.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's going to kill me.
I'm going to look it up right now.
Literally, we're talking about it.
I know. It's a terrible job by us.
Tre'Davious White
Rams.
is a Los Angeles Ram.
You would have rather
29.
seen the Titans do the Sneed deal for the cost, for the draft capital, and, you know, understanding that a 2025 third and a seventh-round pick swap is not, you know, game-breaking draft capital. You would rather have seen them do that deal than give the one-year prove-it deal to Tre'Davious White, who is 29 and coming off an Achilles tear. An Achilles tear for a corner, to me, is borderline no-fly zone. There's just so many, that specific injury for that specific position can do as much harm as any. That's not a career-ending injury. Like, you can still mess around out there, but your transition to safety is coming much sooner in your future than your standard corner without an Achilles tear might.
The compensation was such a no-brainer, right?
Oh, yeah. A 7th-round pick
kidding?
swap and a third? No,
And
get
a
out of here.
future third?
Future third.
How lucky would you be to get a 3rd-round pick that turns out to have the career of L'Jarius Sneed, who was a 4th-round pick in 2020?
That's exactly when I talk about not getting too attached to draft capital, and again, that's not hard draft capital to consider giving up. It's a no-brainer, as you said. But there are so few players who turn out to be actual proven commodities in any given draft class, which is what we've witnessed over the last, not this last one in 2023, but the 3 previous from 2020 through 2022, just how big of a crapshoot it is. Now, they had a particularly bad hit rate over multiple seasons, and that doesn't happen to everybody in a way that's got this roster, on life support coming into this offseason.
But it sounds like the compensation wasn't a big holding up point.
The money has always been the holding up
Yeah.
point. The contract that you were going to have to give him on the back end is always going to be the holding up point. Because that's much more visceral for an organization. It's much more real for an organization. Draft capital is real. Draft capital matters. You have to be able to build your team organically to some extent to avoid some of the financial pitfalls that can come from having to overpay or patchwork things back together or building a team that's more comprised of veterans than you'd otherwise want to do it. And there are teams who have taken that kind of strategy and had success. The Rams, right? Famously, bleep those picks. They have been able to do it in a different way, but also they can find a Puka Nacua in a late round and turn him into as good a player as any wide receiver in football last year based on how they're able to deploy him.
On defense, too. The Rams drafted so well last year.
What are they going to do without Aaron Donald, though? They've been able to get away with a lot of stuff on defense because Aaron Donald is such a difference maker in the middle there.
We haven't talked at all about his retirement.
What's there to say? He's done.
Yeah. I didn't understand the surprise. Everybody acted so blindsided by Donald retiring. He's been talking about retirement since they won the Super Bowl, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Didn't he hint at it that year? And we didn't think he would do it.
He hinted at it to get a raise.
Sure, but I wasn't that surprised by it. It's felt like a year-to-year thing, or am I just totally reading that wrong?
Well, I just think it's hard for people. It's hard for most people to imagine because most athletes don't do this. Walk away. Literally, he led the league in pass rush win rate just last year. Like, it's not like there's been a drop-off for Aaron Donald. He's been in the league a decade. He's made the Pro Bowl every year that he's been in the league, which is insane. I think it's just him. Is it just him and Barry Sanders that have that kind of a record?
He's literally accomplished everything there is to accomplish at his position.
Yeah. And he's tired of his body hurting and getting sat on by not just one 300-pound offensive lineman, but as many as you can throw at him because he's a Tasmanian devil, and you still can't stop him anyway.
Talk about a shoe-in for the Hall of Fame.
All right, are you happy that we did our Aaron Donald talk 2 weeks late?
I was so
had to shoehorn that one in there.
I was
didn't
so
you?
mystified by that. Everybody's like, "Oh my god,
you've been trying to talk about
Donald
Aaron
retired."
You wanted to make it your dumbest thing in sports a couple of weeks. This was like 3 weeks ago.
It was.
All right, breaking news coverage as always, right here on the Buck Rising Show. Get out of here. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, 615-737-1045. We will wrap up the show, update some polls, get you over to Blaine and Mickey coming up next.